So hi everyone, and welcome to the webinar. I'm very excited to be here today. My name is Kaitlin Murray, and today I'm going to be talking about becoming global citizens and the importance of global citizenship and how it's key for us as change makers today in our global age. So today we're going to look at what a global citizen is. We're going to look at why it's so important for us as change makers to become global citizens, and then we're going to go through the 10 key aspects, in my opinion, that make up a global citizen. So these are 10 aspects of a global citizen that I believe all of us, especially the youth, really need to embody in order to achieve global peace, in order to achieve the equality and harmony that we want in the world. So before I begin and move further, I'd love to tell you a little bit more about myself. So as I said, my name is Kaitlin. I am a refugee advocate, human rights advocate, global citizen, of course. I'm a speaker as well and an author. And so a little bit of a background about why global citizenship for me. So I grew up traveling actually the majority of my childhood and my teenage years as well, and I still am to date. And this experience of traveling and seeing the world really made me realize the power of meeting people from other cultures, the power of immersing yourself into another culture. And to date, I've been to 100 countries on 6 continents. And this experience of seeing all of these different places really taught me the power of global unity. It showed me that as humans, we're not as different as we believe we are. And even though we may have all of these different labels and identities in our different countries, religions, cultures, and groups, we are human at heart and we're all the same. And so once I really learned this is a message that I'm really passionate about. And I really want to share this with everybody. And so other than that, I've also started my own nonprofit called Kids Unite for Hope. I started that back in 2015, working with Syrian, Afghan, and Iraqi refugees. And since then, my family and I have actually been volunteering around the world, specifically though in the Middle East and in Greece, helping refugees. So we've started a makeshift school in a refugee camp back in 2016 for the refugee children who weren't able to get an education because they were stuck in this camp. And so my sister and I started a school to teach English classes, math classes, and things like that. And to date, we're still volunteering. We live in Athens, Greece, and we work with mainly Afghan women right now to provide them with an education and to really give them the empowerment and to help them know their rights and know what they can do in the world and that they can achieve their dreams. And at the moment, my passion project is called Changemaker Odyssey, and it's a platform I'm trying to create, an educational platform for young people to really give them the tools and the skills to become change makers as well. So that's a little bit about me and my background, and let's get started. Okay, so first off, let's look at what is a global citizen. So according to Oxfam, a global citizen is someone who is aware of and understands the wider world and their place in it. They take an active role in their community and work with others to make our planet more equal, fair, and sustainable. And in my own words, as you can see, a global citizen is someone who sees themselves not only belonging to one nationality or group, but sees themselves as a citizen of the world. They consider all of humanity equal and a part of one family. Therefore, their work and impact is for the benefit of all of the human race. So this is a very simple explanation, but it's that idea that not only do we value our own cultural identity, but we also realize that we're citizens of the planet. So one of the misconceptions I think that some people have about global citizenship is that they think that it means that you're not acknowledging the fact that you're from a specific place or that you're part of a specific culture, but rather just saying you're part of the world. But instead, it's actually a double identity. So it's about being even more proud of your culture, understanding your heritage, and at the same exact time, realizing that that heritage and that culture is part of a wider community, which is the global community. All right, so why exactly global citizenship, and why is it important for our world today and specifically for us as change makers and as the youngest generation? So looking at some of the biggest issues that are affecting us today, so climate change, racism, violence, war around the world, human rights abuses, political disagreements, these are oftentimes at the root they're rooted in cultural misunderstandings or disagreements. So basically what it is when we look sometimes at the root of these issues, we see that it's all based on different groups having different viewpoints and beliefs about the world, right? So in order to achieve this global peace and unity that we desire, we need to see ourselves as more than just one nationality, religion, or group, and begin to see ourselves as part of the human race. So this is why global citizenship to me is so important, because we always speak about wanting to achieve this global unity. We want to create a new society where we all see ourselves as equal, no matter our labels, no matter where we come from. And so in order to achieve this goal, I believe that we all need to embody this, because we're speaking all the time about wanting to achieve this society where we're all the same and we all collaborate and we all work together. But at the same time, it all starts within us. And so taking these ideas and learning how to embody them can really help us to live out these values that we're trying to share. Okay, so this is going to be the main framework that we're going to use for the webinar today. And just before we begin to dive into each of these points, I would like to suggest, if you haven't already, to grab a notebook, pen, paper. It's going to be very interactive. So throughout each point, we're going to have parts with reflection questions and action steps. And my suggestion for you is to really take some time, even if you want to pause the video as we go through each reflection questions part, and write down, journal, try to answer these questions as much as you can, so that by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to have a tangible action plan, or new ideas, or new things to brainstorm on, or new topics to really reflect on in your own life. All right, so the 10 steps to becoming a global citizen. So, number 1, expanding your viewpoint, becoming aware of belonging to a global community, taking interest in learning about global issues beyond your borders, inner reflection to identify subconscious beliefs, biases, and judgment. That's a very big one. Creating space for more cross-cultural conversations and connection, cultivating compassion and empathy for other cultures, using your voice to advocate for awareness, working to ensure a global perspective is implemented into policy, travel, of course, my passion, transforming your life to be more sustainable, and embodying peace and global citizenship through your actions. So let's get started with number 1. So expanding your viewpoint, becoming aware of belonging to a global community. So this is really the foundational idea of becoming a global citizen, and that's something I mentioned a little bit before, is about seeing yourself as belonging to the community, which is the whole world. So one of the ways that I like to show people to really get them thinking about what it means to be part of this global community is to think about globalization nowadays. And so I like to ask people right now, as you're watching this webinar, as you're listening to my voice, think about the stuff around you and where it comes from. Where did your computer come from? Where does your phone come from? What about the food that you're eating? Where did those products come from? Your clothing, all of these different things. Think about the music you were just listening to, or the movies you were watching, and the actors in those movies. Where did they come from? And when you start to think about this, you start to get this awareness that even though you live in one place, everything around you is from different places. You're already living in a globalized society. Right now with travel, people are going everywhere. Of course, not with COVID, but before, there were people from all over the planet constantly moving around. And so we really live in a globalized world, but what I like to say is everything has become global except for a lot of people's mindsets. So even though all of the products and physical objects around us are from different places, oftentimes we don't have enough of a global mindset to catch up with this fast-paced progress that's going on in the world right now. So it says here, as you can see, we must expand our awareness to realize that our labels do not define who we are. So us as human beings, we belong to the human race. Our labels are just on top of that. And I think this is one of the core problems of what's going on in our world right now, is that we are believing that our identity is rooted primarily in the labels that we put on ourselves, and not as much on the fact that we're all part of the human race. So for example, I may identify that I'm a part of a certain country, or I speak a certain language, or I pray a certain way, and I may identify more with those than the fact that I'm a human. So when issues come up, we identify more with those things and we create this division versus realizing that even though we're from different places, for example, we're all human at heart. So this is a beautiful quote. It says, on the surface, we're all different. We ascribe to a variety of belief systems, attain our identity from various stories, get our customs from diverse cultures, and so on. And rightly or wrongly, we generally define ourselves by these differences. There's no denying that. However, when we look beneath the surface, we discover certain universal elements. Isn't that beautiful? So here's our first batch of reflection questions. I would definitely advise you to grab a notebook, pause the video even if you like. So how are you already living in a globalized life? Do you see yourself as a citizen of the world? Why or why not? This is a very important question to reflect on. What is holding you back from believing that humanity is all connected and one family? How can you expand your viewpoint more to see yourself as a citizen of the world? And what does being a citizen of the world mean to you? So here's some action steps for this section. So try to become aware of how interconnected the world already is. So this is the question that I asked before. How many things around you are from other places? And what about focusing on commonalities instead of your differences? So are you more similar or different to the people around you? And the last one that I talked about as well is looking beyond the labels. All right, so let's get to point number 2. Interest in learning about global issues beyond your borders. So as you can see, these steps are sort of a progression. So the first one was foundational, and this next step builds upon that. So now when we believe that we are citizens of the world, we start to expand our mindset. We start to expand our horizons and wonder what's outside of our borders. We start to question things more and ask deeper questions about what is going on around the planet. And as I like to say, we can't become advocates for causes until we learn more about these causes. So as change makers, it really is our responsibility to know the facts, to do our research, and to understand different viewpoints as well. If we're learning about a conflict, for example, I learned a lot about the refugee crisis, it's very important to understand both sides. How do different people, different groups view these certain issues? So awareness and education are the key to becoming compelled to stand up for change and to make those changes a reality. So in order to really become advocates, we need to be aware, because people who don't know, of course, we can't blame them that they're not advocates because they just are not aware yet. So it really is our responsibility to become more aware. So knowledge is power. Information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. This is such a good quote. All right, so here's our next batch of reflection questions. So how does this new awareness move you to make a change? So once you do your research, you become aware of an issue. How does it move you? What about what global issues were you not aware of until recently? And why do you think that is? Why do you think that information did not reach you until right now? How can you learn more about issues affecting other cultures? What new lessons did you learn while becoming aware of the realities around the world? So I know most of us watching this are change makers already. So what have you learned? What lessons have you learned doing this research and learning more about the world? And how do you view your own life when you understand the realities? Do you have more gratitude for your lives? This is another really important thing, is understanding and being grateful for what we have, and then being compelled to help others who do not have as much. So action steps. Do your research. Research is a big one. So start more conversations across borders and hear real stories. So conversations are something that we will talk later, but these are really important. Create online communities of changemakers around the world, like Global Changemakers, to connect, tell stories, and raise awareness about the issues happening in your country. So here are some tips for when you do your research. So the first one, get rid of any expectations that you may have on the information, because oftentimes when we're already expecting to hear something, we may interpret the content that we're reading and information that we're reading differently than it actually is. So question everything you hear, read, and see. Questioning everything is so important because the internet is such an entire world on its own, and we never know what is fact, what is fiction, what is a mix of both, what is a specific viewpoint of somebody, the biases of different articles or different websites. So really make sure to question what you're reading. Open your heart, listen, and read with an open heart towards other people when you're learning this information. And of course, ask why. So getting to the root of the cause. Keep digging deeper and expanding your knowledge. So every time you find a new piece of information, my suggestion would be to say, well, why is that? And go the next step. And then when you find that other piece of information, say, well, why did this happen? And keep going until you try and get to the root of the cause. So number 3, inner reflection for clearing subconscious beliefs, biases, or judgments. Now, this is probably one of the most important points that we're going to talk about today, because it's really from this that everything is rooted. So how we perceive the world and the beliefs that we have about the world create our reality. And so that may sound a bit complicated, but the fact is that based on the beliefs that we have, we'll act a certain way, speak to certain people, and do certain things. So our life is really molded based on the beliefs that we have, right? So for example, on a tangible level, do you believe that certain things are good or bad? Do you believe that certain foods are good or bad? Do you believe that certain places are good or bad, and things like that? And based on these beliefs, you may eat only certain types of food. You'll only go to certain places. You'll wear only certain clothing, for example, based on the beliefs that you have about that specific thing, right? So on a more global level, and for us as change makers, our views of different cultures, our views of different types of people, our views of different nationalities affect the world at large. And so we see that in a lot of global movements happening. So for example, here I have the Black Lives Matter movement, action or willingness to not act on climate change or political tensions. So really, for example, in the climate change area, there's people that believe in climate change and those that don't. So the fact is that whether or not we're acting upon to fix climate change is based on the beliefs of whether you believe it or not. So this is just as an example, but really all of our lives are rooted in this idea. So your beliefs can influence both you and the people around you. What you expect is what you get. So that's a perfect and clear example. Okay, so subconscious beliefs, how do they play a role for us in our lives as change makers specifically? So I'll read this. So subconscious beliefs are beliefs we hold about the world that we are not aware of. So we're not intentionally judging people maybe based on their labels or their identities. We're not judging people consciously based on where they're from or what they look like, but it's actually rooted inside of us. So when we act upon these beliefs, we're not even aware most of the times that they're even there. So these beliefs can turn into then implicit biases and hidden judgments about other groups of people that affect our capability to collaborate or even live in a just society. So in our own lives, these beliefs can affect who we are willing to help or not help, what cause we'll work towards, our view and judgment towards other people that are different from us, how we perceive other countries, etc. So can you see how really all of our lives are rooted in this? So some questions, if it's still a little confusing, some questions to help you think about it. So have you ever judged someone based just on their nationality? Have you ever made an assumption about someone's behavior or mentality based on what group they belong to? So assumptions are another really big key component in this. Have you ever thought something was bad because that is the way you were raised to believe so? Have you ever judged a person by their physical exterior appearances? So really our beliefs and the beliefs that we have about the world come from our culture, our parents, our peers, our family. We even make up our own beliefs. But a lot of times as children, we soak up the majority of the beliefs we have about the world to date. So how we see the world really comes from the people around us during our childhood. So action steps. So now that we know we want to eliminate the negative beliefs that we have about the world and we want to create new beliefs, here are some action steps. So reflect on your own beliefs you have about the world and ask why. Why do you believe this? Analyze your own culture. See what beliefs about the world are passed down to you subconsciously. And now rewrite your own beliefs about the world. If you want to change things, you can simply create your own. So if you realize that you believe something that you're like, wait a minute, that's not right, you can simply change it. Challenge the status quo. Use your voice to question the way things are. So that's another phrase that oftentimes we hear is that's just the way it's done, or that's the way it's always been done. That's another belief that, and therefore things may never evolve and things may never progress. So focus on beliefs that are good for the good of all of humankind. Research, learn more about another culture or group. The more you learn about them, the more your judgment will fade. So here are the next group of reflection questions. If you like, I would definitely suggest pausing the webinar if you can to really reflect on this right now while it's still fresh. So do you believe that everyone in society, no matter where they're from or what they look like, are equal? Do you believe that men and women, for example, have equal rights? Do you believe that everyone has the right to speak their mind and voice their opinions? Do you believe everyone has the right to pursue their dreams and achieve their goals? Do you believe things in society should be done a certain way? How do you see yourself in society? All right, so number 4, this is the next step. So after we realize what beliefs and subconscious biases we have about the world and the people around us, it's time to create space for more cross-cultural conversations and connections. So this is a huge important element, and it's something that especially as change makers, we love to do. We love to meet people from other places. We love to get to know them. We love to create space for dialogue and for learning about each other's cultures and histories and heritage. And in that, we get to connect. And so as you can see on the picture, this is another organization that I started with some friends of mine. So that's the picture. And there's at least 10 countries represented in that picture from many different continents. And so this to me is a perfect example of what that means to really work together to create that space as change makers for cross-cultural conversations. So when we engage in these authentic conversations and we connect and we open space to really talk about the issues and different biases, and we put all this out on the table, it creates this open space for us as human beings to really create a bridge. Because I feel like, in my opinion, society seems so divided and the world seems so divided. And I think if we're able to really connect again and to have these conversations, we can create more of a global community. So this is the impact that cross-cultural conversations and connection can have. So this is sort of the process that we can go through when we open space for this. So the first one would be having those conversations. So talking about your own culture, talking about your own experiences in the world, talking about your issues, your triumphs, and really letting other people, especially that are from other places, know about your country. And this can create authentic connections. So when we tell our story, especially, and talk about our own experiences, we create these authentic connections. And therefore, we then see the common humanity. So we rise above this idea of just identity and we see ourselves as human, creating more empathy and compassion towards one another, which creates in turn more openness to learn and understand about that culture, creating more friendships. So this is really specifically for just the conversations, but you can see how if this format and this structure was expanded to even conversations between governments, conversations between political parties and all different types of groups, you can see how this, if done properly, can really help us as a human race and as a global society to move forward and to progress. So here's some action steps that now you can take daily. So make an effort to meet more people in your community that are from a different culture, especially if you live in a tourist town. Of course, with COVID, travel has sort of stopped. But if you do live in a tourist town or places where there's different people constantly coming in and out, this is a great way to do so. Or you can make new friends online. So Global Changemakers is a perfect example of this community and of creating this global community. You can create more spaces online for cross-cultural open conversations, Zoom calls, WhatsApp groups, anything like that, even Facebook groups. And so as you are communicating, and if your goal is to really start these conversations, here's some tips as well to really help you understand the other person and to help them understand you. So the first one is be genuine, be honest. Say, I really was not aware, or I had no idea. Thank you for sharing. Be aware as well of your body language. Certain cultures, of course, have different ideas of body language and how that works. Speak with kindness, not judgment, and share your personal stories as well. Personal stories are key in creating this connection between two people, and ask questions that promote conversation. So, for example, my suggestion would be to ask questions that are open-end. So asking something like, well, what do you think about that? Or in your country, how do you do this? Questions that will help people open up and really share. So here are our next reflection questions. So who can you meet in your community to create space for these conversations? How can you begin to hold these conversations with your own friend groups? What kind of things do you want to learn about other cultures or countries? And how can you begin to create these conversations regularly? So think about that right now. Even write down some ideas if you have any of how you can do this on a regular basis. So the next building block is cultivating compassion and empathy. So now that we are learning to engage in these conversations, the next step is to have more compassion and more empathy. And so why compassion, empathy, maybe you're thinking? Well, in my opinion, I think that right now, this is what the world needs. I feel like humanity and our societies and our countries and our cultures seem so divided. It seems like there's so much division. And I think really bringing back compassion and empathy are key, because in a way, I feel like that's the only way to move forward. I feel like the more we acknowledge our differences and we focus on our differences, the more we're going to grow apart, because we're focusing on differences. But I think integrating some kind of compassion on a human level and having all of humanity act out of compassion can really create a change that is long lasting and that is sustainable. So our society needs a shift towards mutual compassion and listening, even if we strongly disagree. So in my opinion, I believe that compassion is what is missing in our society nowadays, where we're so quick to judge, discriminate, or even hate one another. So these are some beautiful quotes from the Dalai Lama, which say loving compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive. If you want others to be happy, practice compassion. And if you want to be happy, practice compassion. So let's look at the action steps and how we can integrate this into our everyday lives. So for example, if you meet someone new, try to have compassion and empathy before judgment. I think that especially as youth, sometimes we're so quick to judge each other. We're so quick to just label each other and make assumptions. But in this case, try and have more openness, open-heartedness, and compassion towards the people that you're meeting, for example. If you're in an argument or a disagreement, especially on global issues, the sustainable development goals, maybe it's even political, remember to acknowledge and listen to the other person's story and experience as well. So listening is very important in this. Keep a focus on the commonalities between you, and remember that everyone has their own beliefs and viewpoints. And this sort of ties back to the cross-cultural conversations and connection, is always remembering that people do have their own viewpoints. And even in conversations that we have with other youth from other places, remembering where they're coming from and remembering their viewpoints can help us to really bridge the gap and to understand where we're coming from. So, how are you cultivating compassion towards other people in your community? And because compassion is so important, even starting in your own family and in your community is a great way to embody global citizenship and being a change maker. How can you show more compassion towards people that you have had a disagreement with? How can you become more aware of your immediate anger or judgment towards others that are different from you? And how can you create more space to feel empathy towards other people's experiences and mindset? So number 6, now that we have opened up in these conversations, we know the role of compassion, let's use our voice for good and become advocates. So probably a lot of us listening to this are passionate about raising our voice to some degree. And if you have not been in that space yet, Raising your voice is so important. Your voice matters. Your voice, your story, your experiences are unique, and you have the ability to reach people and to open their minds and to help them understand what is going on in the world. So really never take that for granted and always use your voice. So as global citizens, it is a responsibility of ours to speak up when we see injustices. Just as young activists, as change makers, we have a duty and responsibility because we are aware of these issues, and being compelled to make a change means that we have a responsibility to speak out. So never be afraid to raise your voice for honesty and truth and compassion against injustice and lying and greed. If people all over the world would do this, it really would change the world. So here are some action steps to really help you even today, right now, as soon as you finish this webinar, to use your voice for good and to become an advocate. So some tips are starting your own online platform to raise awareness about a certain topic or issue. So this could be a Facebook group, maybe an Instagram page, on Twitter, anything like that. You can share content on social media about social change, create videos or content speaking about a topic, and even share it with your friends, family, and your community. You can connect with advocates and activists for a certain cause and highlight their work as well. So don't worry even about having to always create your own content. Simply having the space to really share this information and then to share other people's content is just as valuable and just as important. Or you can hold in-person event, workshops, and to highlight and learn about certain issues, or even attend protests, speeches, or events that aim to highlight a certain topic. So some more questions. How can you be a voice for change in your community specifically? How can you speak up for those who cannot speak up or do not have the right platform at the moment? So how can you be a voice for change for those who cannot speak up? How can you share other advocates' work with your community specifically? How can you contribute with your unique experiences and stories? So how can your experiences of the world inspire others? How can your unique experiences help other people to realize that if you went through it and you rose above it, maybe they can do it too? And what platform can you start today, right now, to raise awareness about a certain topic or issue? So number 7, working to ensure a global perspective is now implemented into policy. So I'll read this out. So we need to help ensure that our country's foreign policies support the building of equitable global solutions to world problems, solutions that work for all countries. So let your government know how you feel by supporting leaders who want their countries to become engaged with the world, not isolated from it. So this is a whole other level now in terms of policy, because what the government does and what our local representatives do does matter, and the policies affect the world. So as global citizens, it is a duty for us to really understand these policies, understand the laws, and to see how they are affecting the planet. Not even just how they're affecting our own citizens, but also how they're affecting all the other citizens of the world, and taking into account all of humanity. So here are some tips and some action steps for how we can really use this idea of global citizenship and bring it to our governments and our authorities. So we can vote for leaders that represent the values of global citizenship and promote global equality and peace. We can sign petitions, for example, and participate in movements that are vocal about ensuring global solutions, or volunteer with organizations that raise awareness. Use your voice to spark conversations with your friends and family. So even beginning in your own home can be really essential. And using your own critical thinking to question policies, decisions, or ideas. So our next batch of reflection questions: what organizations can you get involved with to help with this cause and this idea of bringing more global citizenship into policy? How can you learn more about your country's own policies and the effects that they have even on the world? How can you promote more awareness of this in your specific community? And what are some ways that can ensure your friends and family are also aware of this? So number 8, travel or experience new places. Now, quick disclaimer, of course, with COVID-19 right now in the world, it is definitely much more difficult to travel. So this at the moment may not apply to our global society. However, I think that in the future, it definitely will. So why travel? Well, when we experience new places, we really begin to understand the culture. We get to see firsthand how other people live. We get to see their traditions and their customs. And in that, I think that there brings a sense of humanity and connection, because I think that when we don't visit a place, it can seem so scary or so distant or so far away or so different than us. But when we get there and we actually see that, wow, these are people just like me, for example, or they do things maybe differently, but they have the same goals and dreams, it creates this sense of humanity and this sense of shared humanity. And so that's why I think travel is one of the best ways to get rid of ignorance or judgment or hate towards other cultures, because being there, you realize that they're just like you, and that we're not that different. And as well, when we're taken out of our own comfort zones and we're in a new place, we see we're open to learn in a way. We see that there's more to the world than just our own bubble or just our own box. And therefore we start to expand our mindset and to think about the fact that maybe people do live differently, and maybe my way isn't the only way to live. So as you can see, here's a picture that's my sister and I, and we're with some of our Bedouin friends that we've known for quite a few years now in the ruins of Petra, Jordan. So I feel like this is a beautiful representation of global citizenship and of making new friends around the world and really connecting and seeing that we're all human at heart and we're all the same at heart. So travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness, and many of our people need it sorely. So this is Mark Twain's quote, "Travel makes one modest. You see what a tiny place you occupy in the world." So here are some action steps for this. So you can visit parts of your community or even country that you've never seen before. If you can, visit other countries and immerse yourself as much as you can in that culture. Be intentional about learning about the other culture with an open heart. You can listen to stories. This is a big one, and back to that conversation idea of listening to local people's stories, to asking questions, to understand their experience. And in this way, you can create this sense of connection and this unity. You can have be intentional to make new friends, and really seek out authentic experiences when you do travel, when we all start traveling again, to be spontaneous and flexible. So what parts of your community can you go out and visit? What culture would you like to be immersed into and learn more about? What country sparks your curiosity in the first place? And how can you focus on learning more about other countries, specifically before you go visit? So number 9, transforming your habits to be more sustainable. So as global citizens, we do care about the entire planet as a whole. And of course, a big component in this is sustainability. So the environmental movement has taught us a great deal about how everyday lifestyles and behaviors can have an impact on the quality of life. So the types of transportation, how we heat or cool our homes, our clothing, the food we eat, all of these affect quality of life as a whole on the planet. And so as global citizens, I do believe that it really is our responsibility to act in a more sustainable way as well. So our daily actions really do contribute towards this. So global citizenship is about the whole human connection, but it's also on the other side about our actions and how our actions and being aware that they affect the global society and the global community as a whole. So some simple tips to get started on this even today is reducing your household energy, public transportation, eating locally, or switching to a plant-based diet, which is definitely very helpful and very useful to live a sustainable lifestyle. Plant seeds, grow your own vegetables. You can recycle, reuse, or donate old items as much as you can. Limiting your plastic use or not having plastic entirely, using less water when possible, and using your voice and sharing your knowledge with others to live a more sustainable lifestyle as well, and raising awareness about the effects of global warming, pollution, plastic waste, and climate change in general. So using your voice as well to help other people understand the reality of this, and also to understand the actions that they can take. So taking some of these tips or some things that you do in your own life and sharing them with others to help them live in a sustainable fashion as well. So how can you transform your habits today to live a more sustainable lifestyle? In what way are you already living a sustainable lifestyle? And how can you reduce your waste, electricity usage, or water usage in your home today? And what are some other ways that you could contribute to society to help reduce the effects of climate change? So there's a million different things we can do. So really think about that. What other ways in your home or in your community right now can you contribute to this? And last but not least, embodying global citizenship every day through your actions. So this step is really about tying all these different ideas together and seeing that as global citizens, it is our duty and responsibility, especially as global citizen change makers, to embody all of these different things, to embody this idea of unity, to embody the fact that we're all connected at heart and that our identities are just one small part of who we are, but we're all a part of one family. And really sharing the message of how these ideas can contribute towards peace. I truly believe that this is one of the key elements to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Because, for example, without global cooperation between countries, how are we ever going to actually achieve this? We need to bring back cross-cultural connection, conversations between nations. We need to bring back this idea that we are connected so that we are compelled to help one another, to help people that are outside of our borders or outside of our different groups. So really this idea of global citizenship, I believe, is rooted in everything and is essential to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals as well. So you can use all of these action steps, questions, and ideas to embody global citizenship. So all of these different action steps are a great way to get started. And so to close off, here are a few more characteristics and attributes of a global citizen. So you can see this comes from the role of global citizenship, education, and world peace and security. And these are a few more ways to embody global citizenship. So you can take a picture of that if you want or screenshot it. And of course, there were so many, I was not able to include all of these in the webinar for today, but here are a few more to really help you understand and to get thinking about the different values, skills, and knowledge development for global citizens. So to close it off, thank you so much for listening. So my last little closing thought is that we all have the power to be global citizens. We all have the power to become change makers and to make an impact in the world. And so today, as you're listening to this, don't forget that you can make a change, even if it is small little actions, small little changes, all of those little steps amount to one big change. So never think that you aren't doing enough, because even the smallest of changes can really create a transformation. So thank you so much for listening. And I would love to get in touch. You can see there's my email there and my Instagram as well. Just DM me, send me a message, and I'd love to get connected, see how we can work together, see how we can spread these messages of global unity and of global citizenship with the world. So thank you again for listening, and hope you have a great day. Bye.